Nick here, back with another edition of the Old Weather Wall. Today we're talking about hurricanes and, well, all kinds of tropical systems and why they go the direction that they go. I know a lot of folks, particularly along the Gulf Coast, rightfully, they'll see something out here and they'll say, I've seen this song and dance before, and maybe a couple of these have ended up near me, and things have not gone very well for our area. And so they're a little more anxious about what may be out here. But I want to hopefully alleviate some of that anxiety by explaining to you guys why it is that these things move in the direction that they do and why they can't just go rogue on us and head right toward your house. And I know there's going to be some people that said, yeah, well, I remember Hurricane Bob or Dave or Courtney or whatever hurricane back in 1967 or 84 that did exactly that, but that's before we had better satellites, better modeling, and frankly, before we had better meteorologists. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the folks at the National Hurricane Center that now do this specifically for a living, and have better access to all kinds of data and smarter minds to figure out where exactly these things are going to go. Now, generally, there's three things that impact how these tropical systems move. There's going to be Coriolis, there we go, Coriolis. There's going to be convective depth, and there's going to be ridging. Those three things are going to be kind of the big three factors in how these things moved around. So Coriolis is basically the idea that the stronger a storm is, the more it wants to be pulled toward the North Pole, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, toward the South Pole. Basically, without getting into force balance equations, the stronger a storm system is, the more it feels the tug to the right of whatever direction that it wants to go and toward the North Pole. The second thing on here is convective depth. Now, this gets a little more interesting because this has to do... These are all kind of interconnected, unfortunately. They're not completely independent. Convective depth is how deep and how tall are the thunderstorms that are around the tropical system that's out here. The deeper the storms, again, the stronger the system's going to be, the more it's going to be under the influence of Coriolis. And the deeper the convective depth, the more it's going to be impacted by the ridging that's out there. So we'll say that this tropical system that's out here right now is under the influence of let's see, we've got a ridge of high pressure to the north, and remember the wind around a ridge of high pressure goes like this. The level of influence of that ridging is dependent on how strong it is. A weak ridge, the level of influence will be slimmer. A bigger ridge, the level of influence will be quite a bit wider. Let's say that there's another ridge of high pressure in this made-up scenario over the Gulf of Mexico. And we'll say that this is a smaller ridge of high pressure. It's not quite as large. This system is going to, if it's a tropical storm, I put TS for tropical system, but we'll just say that it's a tropical storm. If it's a weaker tropical storm, it may not be quite as influenced by Coriolis, so its tug to the north is going to be smaller. It's push from the westerlies. These are the natural winds that just kind of go across the Atlantic, by the way, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Cuba, Florida. You guys get the idea? So its tug to the north is going to be quite a bit smaller, and it's still going to get shoved along to the west by the westerlies that are out here. And its level of influence by this big ridge of high pressure is going to be one that if you've got a stronger wind here than you've got here, you're going to have some wind shear. It's probably not going to be as well organized, so it's probably going to kind of move a little bit more like that. If this was a much stronger system, and this was a much weaker ridge of high pressure, let's take out the level of influence here. We'll reduce the influence. This is my favorite part about messing around with weather maps when they're not real, is you can do whatever you want to the atmosphere. It's my favorite thing to do. We'll say this thing is really strong, so its Coriolis is going to be quite a bit stronger. So we'll get rid of that. We'll get rid of that. So its level of influence by the ridge, because the tug of Coriolis is stronger, is going to be to turn this thing a little bit more. So this ridge hasn't even played into the impacts at all. There's been no impact at all by this ridge of high pressure, but let's say this bad boy is robust. And we'll say the level of influence reaches all the way past Cuba. And we'll also say that this level of influence by this ridge remains constant. We'll leave this guy alone. We'll make our tropical system in here a little bit weaker. What's going to end up happening is this is going to run into this level of influence here, and it's going to be deflected down off to the south, and it may end up, and here's the Yucatan. Let's see, where would the Yucatan be? It'd probably be like right. That's a terrible Yucatan, Nick. I'm really not proud of myself right now. But it's going to end up getting deflected down off to the south and may end up near the Yucatan or Central America. Simply because you've got a stronger ridge here, a weaker system here, so there isn't as much Coriolis. It's going to be more apt to run off to the west until it's deflected as it runs into this ridging. You kind of see how all of these kind of play with each other? So whenever you're looking at a forecast from the National Hurricane Center, you can easily just look at the cone and just say, okay, well, the National Hurricane Center meteorologists are smart enough, and I trust them with coming up with an accurate forecast. Or what you can do is you can get online and go find yourself some weather maps, look up at the 500 millibar weather maps, figure out where the big ridges of high pressure like this are, and figure out where it's going to go all on your own, because now you know that what goes into how a tropical system moves is Coriolis, convective depth, and the impact of local ridging.